another of the points that came out of our discussion yesterday was if Iran had the bomb, they wouldn't have been attacked. And, we have three examples that tell us this story other than what we currently are seeing. North Korea, which is not being attacked, Libya, which got rid of its bombs and was attacked, and Ukraine, which got rid of its nuclear weapons and was attacked. It's like there. That's the history of the past
Right.
couple of decades. And so while the US objective ostensibly was eliminating a nuclear capability, it may have the exact opposite effect. Alon, you and I have often talked about how neither Bibi Netanyahu nor Donald Trump are strategic thinkers. And I think, um, Trump's theory of this whole thing was he didn't want to do it, then he was forced to do it, then he did it, and now he wants it to be one and done because he doesn't really have a plan, a next step. It looks like the Israeli next step is, well, we'll just keep bombing you. But nobody wants to put boots on the ground, and that's the only way you're going to produce long-term change. So from your perspective, sitting where you are, where does this all go, or does indeed it go anywhere? Can Iran just hunker down, play the long game, and sort of we're back to square one?
Well, all right. I will predicate what I'm saying on what both Joe and David said before me, which is very not only thoughtful but informative, and take it from there. If the stated objective that Israel had was to set back the Iranian nuclear program as much as possible and then hope for a game changing, massive American involvement that supposedly came, but the BDA, the bomb damage assessment, or the exact damages that were caused is unclear yet. But if I'm Israel, I would declare mission accomplished and walk away right now. Okay, now here's the logic here. You said, David, that neither Trump nor Netanyahu are strategic thinkers. Trump for sure is not a strategic thinker, and I think you are on the money. And I'm not trying to joke here. You were on the money when you said that his number one consideration and calculation is what will his golf buddies tell him, and what would his real estate friends from Jamaica Heights and Queens tell him? All right. Netanyahu is a different case. He is thinking strategically, but gets it all wrong, in my mind, at least. He's driven by a semi-messianic savior of Western civilization and protector of the Jewish people, uh, um, uh, you know, uh, delusion, and it leads him to where it leads him. Now he's euphoric because he thinks he achieved everything Providence put him here to achieve. Now, I don't want to sound too ecclesiastical about all this, but here's why I would get up and leave. Iran was severely weakened geopolitically throughout 2024. No point in relitigating this. They lost a network of proxies. Their prize trophy, Hezbollah, was degraded militarily in a significant way. They lost Syria. With the fall of Assad, they also lost a Russian contingency that was there. Okay, they were weakened. And so Israel further weakened them in the last 11 days, number one. Number two, Israel established a almost unprecedented and overwhelming aerial superiority over Western Iran, which means that's there to stay. That is a circumstance. That is a reality that's not going to change. Meaning that you can walk out now, and if the Iranians do not reciprocate, you can go and attack again if you find a justification for it. Third, I think that in terms of the nuclear program, I would go as far as, I mean, Joe would probably likely disagree. Given the circumstances that exist now, you don't even need a nuclear deal. What I mean by that is that if Israel stops now, you know, Sun Tzu, the Chinese strategic thinker in the 5th century BCE, spoke about the Golden Bridge, providing the enemy with a golden bridge from which he can disembark, as to not humiliate him and force him for a suicidal or horrible last stand. Okay, no one likes gold more than Donald Trump, and he could take credit. Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying, Joe. Right? He could take credit for this. So my point is, right now, there are three possibilities. One is that the Iranians will overreach, and their reaction to their attack in Qatar, Bahrain, and from what I'm hearing, also some base in Iraq, American base. If they overreach and Trump has to retaliate because he, retaliate the retaliation and respond to the response and so on and so forth, then we're in a different scenario. But as far as Israel is concerned, if this devolves into a war of attrition, meaning a cyclical pattern of Iranian missile barrages and Israeli attacks, that's bad, and without an American involvement. That will diminish Israel's military achievements, particularly, very impressive achievements, particularly because there's a ratio of how many missiles they have and how many interceptors we could put in the air. The second and most important thing is, if we don't do this, then people are going to take seriously all this flirting with regime change. And that's where a huge chunk of, hits a big fan.
Okay, so let's look at this, David. Um, it's too early to say a lot of things. It's too early to do a bond damage assessment. It's too early to determine what the Iranians may or may not do with their nuclear program. But we know some things. One is the US has sort of sent a message it doesn't want to keep going. It wanted to bomb, get rid of the nuclear program, and get out, with the exception of the president's kind of ill considered comment on regime change. The Iranians now have sent a message, and we've learned a little more since even we started this podcast, that they're apparently saying they sent the same number of projectiles against the bases they targeted today as the US had. In other words, they're trying to sort of say, okay, here we are, you did your thing, we did our thing, and that gets us to Alon's Golden Bridge. The Golden Bridge has a number of advantages. It leaves the Iranians able to do some rebuilding and possibly, in secret, do whatever they want with their nuclear program. It leaves Trump able to declare victory. It leaves Netanyahu able to declare victory, but to continue to have an enemy in Iran, which he needs in order for his political things. And another player we haven't mentioned here, you've written a lot about, Vladimir Putin, gets to keep his ally, which is very important to a lot of what he's doing in Iran, in what he's doing in Ukraine. And I don't know that Trump really wants to piss off Vladimir Putin. And so to me, it seems like the most likely outcome, and let's talk about the most likely outcome, is some resolution. A, do you agree with that? And B, if that's the case, what does Iran do next?
Uh, Really good question. It's what we're all struggling with. So I would say we've got three big questions that come out of this. And before we dealt with the first, Joe and I discussed, which is what happens to the nuclear program. I'm with Joe. I think the way you conclude uh, from this is they're going to determine they really did need a nuclear weapon, and there's probably if there are courts of inquiry in Iran. One of them may be who came up with the bright idea of just walking up to the line and not walking over it, right? Because if they had walked over it, as you made the point, nobody's going to go do this to North Korea right now. And by the way, that's why I have a heretical thought here, a little bit of sympathy for the decision making that the Trump administration made here, because I know a lot of people who worked for Bill Clinton who now wish they had made a different call in 1994, right? that when Clinton was thinking of taking military action against the North Korean facilities, just when North Korea was leaving the NPT, I remember this was my very last days as Tokyo bureau chief for the Times. I was coming back to Washington, so this was 31 years ago, that Clinton decided not to act militarily. And where did we end up? 60 or more North Korean nuclear weapons. So I'm not, I think the question you always have to ask yourself as a reporter covering this is, if this had been Bill Clinton or Joe Biden or Barack Obama making this decision, would that change the way we thought about the strategic logic here? To the second question, which is yours, is what does this now do to the region? I think the Iranians will be frozen in place. They've lost a huge amount of their IRGC leadership. The supreme leader is in such hiding that we think he may not have been communicating fully with his foreign minister, so they couldn't get decisions going, even on the question of whether to meet with the Americans before the attack. So my guess is you're going to see a lot of paralysis. Nobody in Iran's going to want to go meet with the Trump folks. And right now, I don't see that the Trump administration, at least as they've explained it to me, has a strategy of what they want. I mean, the president can go out there and say, I want unconditional surrender. Well, if you're not at war with Iran, but rather with the Iranian nuclear program, what's to surrender to? And by the way, I would say the same thing about the Israeli attacks, because I don't understand what their end game is either. What conditions would they take to stop attacking? We haven't heard. And then you raise the next question, which is, does this drive the Iranians further to the Russia, China, North Korea camp? Or do the Iranians come out of this and say, hey, wait a minute, we were being attacked for 8 days. Did I get a lot of phone calls from Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin saying, boy, it's awful what you're going through. What can we send to help? I don't think they got that call.